The two names that have kept love and hip-hop fans glued to their screens, Rasheeda and Jasmine, are once again in the heart of a tempest so intense that social media is constantly buzzing. Imagine a tense atmosphere where hearts are pounding, eyes are locked, and Jasmine is speaking in a way that is more devastating than any previous betrayal. She gives Rasheeda a direct look and says the thing that no wife wants to hear. He will never again refer to you as his wife. You heard correctly. Fans are shocked and divided as the tension, resentment, and unadulterated passion all converged in one dramatic moment. Was this just another tense exchange? Was Rasheeda's entire claim to Jasmine's marriage just buried? Nobody could have guessed how the drama would play out. Voices raised, secrets revealed, and reputations shattered in real time. Family members and friends attempted to step in, but the harm was already done. The sound of grief reverberated through the walls, the air was heavy with betrayal, and watchers from all over the world were in disbelief. Everyone is watching to see who will survive the fallout because this was more than just a fight, it was a declaration of war. Rasheeda and Jasmine's tight quiet was the beginning of what is already being referred to as one of the most memorable eruptions in love and hip-hop history. Even the cameras appeared to hesitate before rolling due to the intense quiet. With her arms pressed firmly to her chest, her fingernails tapping her forearm, and her eyes blazing with the kind of rage that only comes from years of humiliation and betrayal, Rasheeda sat across from Jasmine. However, Jasmine, music, wasn't present to play well. Every fan in attendance could sense that she was there to regain control rather than to apologize. Friends, family, and even some cast members had gathered around them because they knew something explosive was going to happen. Earlier in the day, Kirk had attempted to negotiate, but he left the battlefield open for conflict when he saw that the two women were not going to back down. When Jasmine leaned back in her chair and smirked, music, with a confidence that sliced through the air like a dagger, emotions were already running high, and Rasheeda was unable to contain herself. With a shaky but powerful voice, Rasheeda yelled, "You've been nothing but a shadow in this family. You believe you can change the course of history by entering my house in marriage? You think he'll ever see you as more than a mistake?" I asked, feeling the sting of years of suppressed anger. Jasmine, however, remained unflinching. Her eyes flashed as she leaned forward. "Mistake? You mean the reason your so-called hubby can't even look at you the same anymore?" The crowd gasped. "The reason he calls me when you're too busy pretending everything is perfect?" Friends kept their mouths shut. Kirk, who had been standing close to the doorway, froze in disbelief. Rasheeda's lips trembled as she tried to remain calm, but as she shot back, her voice broke. "Jasmine, you have no idea what marriage is. You're just a diversion. You have no idea what it takes to establish a life with someone through years of hardship, betrayal, and forgiveness." However, Jasmine wasn't done. She wasn't there to protect herself. Her purpose was to destroy. She sprang up, banged her hand on the table, and said, "Music, loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm the reality check you've been avoiding, Rasheeda. Distraction? No. He won't ever call you wife again, and I want to be clear about that." The room burst into turmoil. Later, other followers claimed to have heard a glass break off camera. Others claimed to have witnessed Kirk bury his face in his hands because he couldn't believe Jasmine had said it aloud. Social media took off right away. Hashtags like #TeamRasheeda and #JasmineSaidIt were prevalent in Facebook posts, Instagram lives, and tweets. Fans couldn't agree on anything. Some are defending Rasheeda's marriage and years of commitment. Others asserted that Jasmine was merely expressing what Rasheeda had been refusing to acknowledge. However, Rasheeda's world came to a halt at that precise moment. Her body felt numb, as if the ground had suddenly vanished beneath her feet, but she could hear people attempting to defuse the situation. Her eyes began to flood up with tears, but she resisted them, not wanting to satisfy Jasmine. "Music," Rasheeda muttered, her voice shaking, "You're pathetic." One Jasmine chuckled, saying, "You'll never be me. You'll never have what I built." That cold, cutting laugh that made the room feel even smaller. Her following remarks were only audible to Rasheeda because she leaned in just enough. As soon as he picked me, he left what you had constructed. Even though it was quiet, Rasheeda's heart could hear that whisper as clearly than any scream. The others saw Rasheeda's face fall, even if they couldn't hear. It was evident that Jasmine's remarks had affected her more severely than any public humiliation had ever done because of the way her strength seemed to waver for a brief period of time. Viewers repeatedly watched the video, examining Rasheeda's response, focusing on her face, and discussing whether or not this was the point at which she ultimately cracked. "Enough, Jasmine. Stop this," Kirk said in an attempt to step in. However, years of feeling like the outsider, the other woman, and the antagonist in everyone's narrative had Jasmine on a roll. "No, Kirk," she yelled back, her voice trembling with rage. "I'm tired of being silent while she acts as though your marriage is impenetrable. Everyone is now aware of the reality that she is merely clinging to a title that has no real significance." Cameras caught every flicker of emotion as the crowd exploded in whispers, with some shaking their heads and others silently approving. With shaking hands and a low but poisonous voice, Rasheeda slowly rose to her feet. "Jasmine, you'll regret this." Before she could leave the room, Jasmine hurled one final dagger. "You've embarrassed yourself, and one day you'll realize you were nothing more than a chapter he's desperate to erase. Delete me. The mother of his child, the nights he failed to return home to you, and the fact that he has already been chosen in his heart cannot be erased, honey." That was the tipping point. Tears welled up in Rasheeda's eyes. She stormed out, unable to contain herself any longer. The room became completely chaotic, with cameras pursuing her. While some hurried to console Rasheeda, others attempted to soothe Jasmine. Kirk was caught in the midst of a storm that appeared to be more powerful than anything he had ever encountered. Online fans would later refer to it as the wife versus reality showdown. A conflict between love, devotion, and treachery that made it difficult to distinguish between performance and the real thing. Nevertheless, the most important question was still unanswered when part 1 came to an end. Was Jasmine correct? In all but name, has Rasheeda already lost her status as a wife? Above all, how would Kirk react now that everyone had witnessed the devastation taking place in front of them? As Rasheeda stormed out of the room, the cameras followed, her heels clicking on the gleaming floor like gunfire in a battlefield. Inside, Jasmine stood tall, enjoying the mayhem she had just caused, practically daring anybody to question her, while every step was driven by heartbreak and humiliation. With a panicked voice, Kirk called Rasheeda's name repeatedly as he hurried after her. But she wouldn't go back. Her pride was destroyed in front of friends, family, and the globe, and tears clouded her vision. "And that's what happens when the truth hurts too much," Jasmine said to herself as she smirked back inside. However, Jasmine failed to notice the increasing tension in the space. The way cast members and friends were suddenly muttering and turning against her, wondering whether she had gone too far this time, if her statement had passed a boundary that could never be undone. Kendra, one of Rasheeda's best friends, got up and addressed Jasmine, her voice shaking with shock and rage. "Music, do you really believe this is a victory for you? You're proud of putting down another lady in front of everyone. Do you even hear yourself? Don't act like you don't know what's been going on." "I'm just the only one brave enough to say it out loud," Jasmine retorted, giving her a harsh look. Kendra mumbled, her face contorted with contempt. "Brave? That wasn't courageous, Jasmine. That was unkind." Social media was already ablaze, with videos of the altercation becoming viral in a matter of minutes. The dispute then intensified, with voices overlapping as people hurried to take sides, some defending Rasheeda's dignity while others nodded silently agreeing that Jasmine wasn't wholly wrong. Jasmine's caustic remark, "He'll never call you wife again," is being repeated by fans. As hashtags like #JusticeForRasheeda and #JasmineExposed trended, people debated if it was the lowest blow of all time or a power maneuver. The fact that Kirk Frost, the man at the center of this storm, was silent for the first time, torn between two women who both claimed ownership of his loyalty, his love, and his identity as a husband and father shocked fans the most. In the hallway, Rasheeda collapsed against the wall, sobbing while cameras captured her raw side. "After everything I've been through with him, after everything I fought to protect, how could she throw that in my face?" she whispered through tears. How was he able to remain motionless? While critics, music, demanded that Kirk finally take a stand once and for all, fans at home sobbed and flooded her Instagram with supportive messages, saying things like "Stay strong, Queen, and you deserve better." "Girl, you might think you won this, but let me tell you something, no matter what you say, Rasheeda has that ring, she has that history, she has that family," said Sierra, a castmate. Jasmine was pacing back inside, her earlier confidence beginning to waver as she realized the room wasn't as supportive as she thought. In everyone's perspective, you will always be the supporting character. Side piece? Then why does he come crawling back to me every time she pretends everything is fine? Jasmine spat back, her face hardening and her jaw tightening. The crowd halted in stunned stillness as the words, "Why does he call me when she can't give him what he needs?" struck like lightning. "This is toxic and you're proud of it," Sierra mumbled before raising her hands. Kirk, meanwhile, eventually caught up to Rasheeda and softly grasped her arm. "Please, don't listen to her. Don't let her get to you," he said, his voice breaking. With a shrill and shaky voice, Rasheeda yanked her arm away. "Get to me? She just told everyone that you no longer consider me to be your wife, and you remained silent." "Nothing, Kirk. Do you know what that felt like?" Kirk's face was pale. Perspiration was starting to form on his brow as he tried to think of anything to say, but his words sounded hollow in comparison to Jasmine's allegations. Some viewers yelled at their TVs that Rasheeda should permanently leave, while others pleaded with the music, Kirk to finally stand up for her in public and permanently silence Jasmine. The cameras continued to record every painful detail while executives hurried in the background, discussing urgently about whether to cut the sequence or whether things had gone too far. Outside, music, Rasheeda inhaled deeply, dabbed at her tears, and turned to Kirk, her expression half despair, half rage. "Kirk, if you don't correct the record tonight, I won't be able to go past this. You let her to humiliate me in front of everyone and take away everything I've held onto for years." His hands trembled as he reached for hers after hearing her words, but she withdrew, leaving him dumbfounded as she disappeared into the night. Fans flooded live chats and comment sections arguing who was truly at fault, while Jasmine continued to argue back inside, defending her outburst as nothing more than the truth people needed to hear. However, some of her friends were distancing themselves, fearing that her desire for power had simply turned into self-destruction. Was Rasheeda, music, unwilling to confront a harsh reality that Jasmine was revealing? Or was she taking advantage of someone's weakness in order to win a conflict in which she could never really declare victory? The tension increased as the night went on, and everyone realized that this wasn't just another altercation but rather the start of a conflict that would destroy the fan base, the family, and the friendships. And yet, through the chaos, through the tears and the accusations, one thing was becoming dangerously clear. Jasmine wasn't finished yet. She was only getting started, if anything. Rasheeda left, but the night was far from over. Actually, that's when the storm really started to get out of hand, since Jasmine's confidence increased as soon as she vanished into the shadows. Once more, as if Rasheeda's absence allowed her to take center stage. "You all can hate me if you want, but I'm the only one telling the truth, and deep down, you know I'm right," she said, turning to face the group while the cameras continued to roll. "He doesn't see her the same anymore, and pretending otherwise is just embarrassing," he said as the room exploded once more, with cast members yelling over one another. Some demanded that Kirk return and finally take a stand, while others yelled for Jasmine to stop. Fans cheered Jasmine on with the hashtag #TruthHurts and chanted hashtag Team Rasheeda while live tweeting every second from their homes. However, Jasmine was unprepared for Kirk to return in a matter of minutes. His hands were shaking, his face was pale, and his eyes were wild, as if he had just witnessed all he had created come to an abrupt end. "Jasmine, enough!" he shouted, his voice breaking from the commotion. "Don't you realize how much harm you've already caused tonight?" However, Jasmine refused to give up. Rather, she moved forward and whispered, "No, Kirk. I didn't cause this," her eyes hardening. "Don't blame me for the truth you're too weak to face. You did by living a lie, by stringing her along while giving me promises you never had the courage to admit out loud." The words cut through the atmosphere, and for a brief moment, quiet descended. The kind of stillness that causes everyone to hold their breath in anticipation of the next explosion and is more deadly than yelling. You don't get to stand here and act like you're some truth teller when all you've ever done is chase after someone else's husband. "Jasmine, you ruined a family and now you're proud of it," yelled Kendra, Rasheeda's friend. "Please don't make me laugh. That family was already broken long before I showed up." "I didn't ruin anything," Jasmine snapped back, rolling her eyes. The back and forth heated up. "I just exposed what was already falling apart." Security personnel moved in closer, prepared to step in if fists flew. For what would surely be the season's highest-rated moment, producers had to decide whether to turn off the cameras or keep them running. In the meantime, Rasheeda was sitting in her car in the parking lot, tears flowing down her face as her phone erupted with calls, music, from friends, admirers, and even her mother pleading with her to leave Kirk permanently this time. "Baby, how much more of this are you going to take?" her mother's voice said over the phone. "How many more times will he allow that girl to degrade you before you realize he's not worth it?" Rasheeda sobbed in silence, unable to respond because, deep down, she didn't know the answer. She cherished Kirk. She cherished their family. But Jasmine's comments continued to reverberate in her mind like a curse, and the humiliation had reached a breaking point. "He will never again refer to you as his wife." Back inside, Kirk was on the edge of passing out, pleading with Jasmine, "Please, just stop this madness. You don't know what you're doing." Jasmine's harsh laughter sent shivers down the spine. "Oh, Kirk, I know precisely what I'm doing. I'm releasing you from a long-dead marriage and the jail you've been imprisoned in." The cameras zoomed in as she reached for his hand in front of everyone, causing gasps to fill the air. "You don't get to define my marriage. You don't get to take that from her." Kirk wrenched his hand back, his face contorted in agony. Jasmine looked terrified for the first time all night, her confidence wavering as she saw Kirk had finally raised his voice against her. However, the harm had already been done. Every utterance, allegation, and humiliation had been recorded for perpetual replay by the globe. Jasmine pushed back, tears welling up in her eyes as she yelled, "Don't act like you haven't told me things you could never say to her," as friends started to usher her away while murmuring for her to calm down. "Don't pretend that you haven't whispered that you felt stuck, that you wanted to get out, and that you saw me as your way out." The admission was like dynamite in the room. Everyone halted, staring at Kirk in anticipation of his answer. More damaging than anything Jasmine had said during the evening was the silence that ensued. He didn't refute it. He remained silent. No scream could be heard above his quiet. As soon as possible, viewers from home bombarded timelines with theories. Had Kirk truly expressed his desire to part ways with Rasheeda to Jasmine? Had he really told her about the worst aspects of his marriage? Was this the ultimate betrayal? Rasheeda shuddered in her automobile under the weight of it all, feeling the betrayal without even hearing it, as though her heart knew before her ears could. When Kirk finally muttered, "Jasmine, stop," back in the room, Jasmine persisted despite his shattered voice. "No, Kirk, just say it. Admit it to them. Admit it to her. Admit it to her." The audience drew in. "Tell them what you told me. Admit it to yourself." The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his confession as the cameras got closer. Music, instead, Kirk fell into a chair, buried his face in his hands, and whispered, "I can't do this anymore." The room was rocked by that one statement. Fans at home erupted with inquiries, Jasmine's eyes became big, and Rasheeda's friends gasped. Did he mean Jasmine? Concerning Rasheeda? Or about the whole complicated triangle that had taken over his life? Everyone was in a frenzied search for answers as the uncertainty further heightened the drama. Eventually, as the night went on, Rasheeda came back. Her music posture was powerful, like a queen who would not be overthrown, despite the dried tears streaking her face.